Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you are all well, and welcome to evening 4. Wow, this week has gone quick. Evening 4 of ACCA SBL Practice to Pass webinars, hosted by myself, Alexander Leach. I've got a good evening in plan or in store for you this evening, and thank you for all those who've attended throughout the week. And if it's your first session, maybe you've not managed to make the live sessions, if it's your first live session this evening, hopefully you'll engage using the question panel. As we go along, we are going to be dissecting a case study this evening called Highlights. Now, Highlight is an exam from December 2018, so exactly 1 year from the sitting that you guys will presumably be taking, which is this December sitting. So we'll be taking a walkthrough, which is what we'll call this, an exam walkthrough of the December 2018 Highlight Hotels exam. In order for you to do that, if you haven't already, you will need the December 2018 exam, which you can either get from the handout section on the GoToWebinar platform, which hopefully will be there. In fact, it definitely is, because Kishore, our wonderful assistant who deals with the technical side of this platform, has assured me and shown me that they're uploaded already. But if you so happen to want to get them from another means, you can also get them from the ACCA website on the study resources page. So we've done the welcome. Thank you very much again for joining. I can see some familiar names on the attendees, and we'll get started and just sort of talk through the rest of the agenda. So we've already done evening 1, and I might as well just tick through that. And we did an introduction. We talked about the ethics and professional skills module. We talked about some study tips and exam techniques, how to approach the strategic business leader exam. We then spent some time talking about the report that the examiner produces, so the examiner's reports that they produce for every single exam. And these reports are effectively the insight in how all students have done over that particular exam. And it gave a lot of feedback in terms of what students had done well, but probably more valuable, what students had done in terms of not so well. And we spent a lot of time summarizing them and making sure that we don't make the same mistakes again. And I will reference, and I'll go back to those examiner report debriefs and the summary that I did over the period of the next 2 days, just to reiterate that we don't want to be making the similar mistakes that people have made previously. On evenings 2 and 3, we walked through the specimen paper 2, which was a company known by Railco. Railco was a large public sector organisation owned by the taxpayers effectively and ran by the government of a country called Beeland. It provided rail services all around that country, and we had 5 requirements that we dissected over the course of evenings 2 and 3. For the last 2 evenings, we will be doing evening 4 and 5, so December 2018. Highlight is a hotel chain, and we might as well take a dive into this as we press on. So that's a nice picture actually, but we'll move away from that. This is what the exam looks like. It is, I believe, I think it's a 14-page document. Within it, you've got an introduction. You also have the requirements. Now, in this particular exam, there are only 3 requirements, but the requirements are considerably larger in terms of mark allocation compared to the ones in Railco. So I will, do a comparison and try and find some similarities, and hopefully you guys will get some value out of noticing some patterns within the structure and the way the questions are asked and how we go about pulling them apart and finding our way through the exam effectively. Hopefully everybody's got this, which is fantastic. And as I said, if you haven't, it's on the handouts or you can get it from the website. It really would help if you have it to hand, because we are now going to do a little bit of a talk about the introduction. So I stressed to you the necessity of having a highlighter and a ruler in your exam, and the highlighter is very much the lightsaber, something that you can use to cut through with colour the necessary information and the important parts of the case. So we'll start with the introduction. Highlight is a listed hotel chain located in the country of Deeland. Now, immediately, I take notice and take exception to the fact that this is a listed company. It's a listed company, and therefore it will be held to the standards of corporate governance that a listed organisation should be. So that's important for you to bear in mind throughout the organization, because you will have a certain degree of increased investors. The market will be dictated in terms of the competitiveness. So the focus now for this listed company will potentially be more towards profitability and shareholder wealth maximization, as well as some other interesting sort of stakeholder concerns where we'll look at things like integrated reporting, as opposed to in previous case studies, which was public sector, which was more concerned with value for money. To get a little bit of background around the country in which Highlight operates in, Dealand is a developed economy, so we can sort of take a little bit of information there and hold on to that as well, which has experienced strong growth in the last 15 years. Dealand also has a highly developed tourism industry. So this is probably not a bad place for a hotel chain to operate. Highlight's competitive advantage is built on its competitive pricing strategy. So we know that the actual initial sort of onset here is that we've got a relatively, I'm going to call budget hotel. In fact, yes, it pops up there. So they have a budget hotel and they compete predominantly based on price. They refer to themselves as being no frills. Every Highlight hotel room provides an ensuite bathroom, TV, Wi-Fi, internet, and a complimentary buffet breakfast, which would be quite nice. And then if I move forward, however, in yellow, Highlight hotels such as, I'll start that again, every Highlight hotel has a similar layout design and are mostly located at airports, city centre locations, and close to major transport routes, such as Dealand's main road network and train station. So again, I've highlighted that. I want to take note of that as well, because it's giving you an understanding of the type of business in which Highlight is. It's a budget hotel, it's a listed organization, it's a no frills type of sort of competitive advantage based on pricing, and they've got strong logistical locations. You might even look at this case study and think it sounds very familiar to some organizations that you are maybe very, well, you know a lot about. So maybe budget hotels is something that you stayed in or have experience in, and maybe one of the similarities in terms of the case or the topics of the case that happens within SBL is they more often than not have to be large scale industries for the ACCA to be able to write a significant case study about them. So rail and transport, that was a significant industry, and now we've got travel and tourism, which again is a very large part of an organizational economy. Highlight was founded over 40 years ago and began in the capital city of Dealand. Since then, it has significantly grown with 510 hotels and approximately 46,000 hotel rooms in the year-end 2000X7, 2000X8. In the notes, Highlight's financial year is the end of June, and it is the largest hotel chain in terms of hotel numbers in Dealand. So you could to some extent refer to it as the market leader for hotel chains in terms of hotel numbers. In blue, all the Highlights growth has been achieved organically. So far all they've done is continue to grow organically. So that's an interesting market growth strategy. So again, that's why I've pulled that out there. But now they're talking here about sort of fierce competition with several hotels, home-based, and international hotel chains. What's exciting about this case study is it actually links quite nicely to things that you might be familiar with. It gives a non-branded inclination and tip of the hat to things like Airbnb, which might be something you actually are familiar with. So that's very good. Moving forward, in the last 10 years, there has been significant involvement or investment, in the web-based technology, with over 75% of the rooms being booked on Highlight's website for the year 2000X7, 2000X8. So if I was looking at this from a sort of understanding background, I'd be thinking, wow, they have a competitive advantage based on price, and they're also very technically innovative in terms of using their website. So rather than using maybe a traditional hotel outlet, direct bookings, or having an intermediary, they use their website. So that's pretty good in terms of organizational structure. Highlight values its staff very highly, and this leads to strong commitment and staff development. Highlight pays above the national minimum wage in Dealand, which encourages staff commitment and loyalty, which is very good in terms of maybe corporate social responsibility and the commitment of those employees, which leads to good customer service. Who are we? Well, you, me, and everybody who was answering this exam in 2018, December 2018, was a senior business analyst working within the business analysis department of Highlight. So you are an internal stakeholder, you are an employee of the organization, and you report to the chief business analyst, who reports directly to the finance director on a wide range of business and strategic issues. We've got 6 exhibits. Exhibit 1 is the chief executive statement reporting on the performance to the end of 2008. Exhibit 2 is a Dealand hotel industry report, which might be very insightful if we are looking at how well Dealand is doing, so how well Highlight is doing in comparison to maybe some of its competitors and other trends within the actual hotel industry within that country. Exhibit 3, a fact sheet about a potential acquisition target. So that's actually quite a point to note. So already we are aware that Highlight has previously just grown through organic growth, but now they're looking at maybe expanding through acquisition. So they're changing their strategy. And when any organization changes their strategy of growth and the way they compete, there are potential risks attached to that. So a bit of commercial acumen is very much needed already here. A newspaper article, very much like there was in the other previous case study, some briefing notes, an extract from a senior management team briefing, and board minutes from November 2018 board meeting. So again, you've seen some 6 exhibits. We've got a large industry, this one being, hoteliers, travel and tourism, and we've got 3 requirements. We'll dissect the requirements as we go along, but I just want to have a little skim through this one. So this one relates to the current business model in Finlandia, which could potentially be this is the country which we're looking to acquire an organization in. So we're going to talk a little bit. So I think it's called Comfy Stay. C-O-M-F-I, an interesting spelling of comfy. And this is an organization that we'd be looking to buy in a different country. This relates to the acquisition. Moving into part B. Yes, there it is, Comfy Stay. We are now going to look at a fact sheet to prepare a report for the FD. And again, we will dissect these. Now, what I will say is it's exception to note is the significant mark allocation. So we've got 16 marks for technical. And unlike the last rail curve case study, where it was around 2 marks for each requirement, we've got 3 marks here for professional skills of analysis and 4 marks here for evaluation. So this exam was slightly more heavily weighted per requirement. And so we'll probably take more time through each requirement to see how we get those marks. There's a lot to go at here. Requirement 2, we're moving further on in our time, and we will be looking at Dealand's daily news reports. We need to draft a press release about the social and environmental impacts of a proposed investment. So that's quite a nice one. It's giving you a lot of direction there. 10 marks for this requirement, 3 marks for communication. And what we've learned so far is that when we're asked for the professional marks on communication, your structure, your tone, and understanding your audience is extremely important. So we need to know how to actually draft up and write a press release. Moving further into requirement 2, part B, you're asked to produce briefing notes here. And the actual briefing notes would be focused around integrated reporting. And this section of the syllabus is something that students sometimes skim over, very much like we did last night when we talked about projects. Integrated reporting is another area of the syllabus that students technically or generally aren't that happy is probably the wrong word, generally aren't that engaged with. So I'd implore you all to try and get a little bit about integrated reporting within your understanding, because it could be something that might come up this sitting. The professional skill here is evaluation, and a nice 3 marks. Remember on our Kahoot last night, we joked and said that evaluation is a one-sided argument. It's not. It is effectively a balanced discussion. It doesn't have to be of equal weighting, should I add to that. It just needs to show that you can argue both sides. Question 3, 14 marks here for talking about disruptive technologies and how they're applied and how Highlight could maybe harness these disruptive technologies to help it with its competition and its competitive advantages. And the professional skills here are for skepticism. So 4 marks for actually showing that you can question assumptions and professionally be skeptical in terms of when you are producing your answer. The requirements asking for a report. Hopefully by now you are more than capable of understanding what a report format looks like. We tried to hammer this one home yesterday. So to, from, date, subject, introduction, subsections with subheadings, and a closing statement or a conclusion at the end of that report. Moving into 3B, 12 marks available here for doing, oh, what a wonderful requirement, 3 presentation slides. There's a similarity from our previous paper. So we've got a nice pattern, somewhat of a pattern arising here, whereby you can produce 3 presentation slides with accompanying notes. Fantastic. So make sure if you were to answer this or get a similar requirement, you don't just do one or the other. And if you were to look at the examiner's report for December 2018, you would see that many students did one or the other. So if I were you guys, I would heed the warning of the examiner, take note, and make sure that if you do get a requirement like this, you make sure you produce the required and asked about number of presentation slides with accompanying notes. And this is talking about risks. And you're actually really well prepared for this one because the risks are given to you in the exhibit. So you're able to find them, they're very distinctive. So as we talk about the exhibits, let's just have a little overview. So exhibit 1, the Chief Executive Statement, a report on performance for the year June 2008. Now this is a lovely exhibit. It gives you a little bit of an understanding of who the Chief Executive is and what the key performance indicators are, and then their focus for the future. So it lays it out very nicely. And we will be walking through this per the requirement that we need to. Exhibit 2 is Dealen's Hotel Industry Report. Within this, it's actually produced by a professor who is giving a chief analyst for the Dealen Travel and Hospitality Institute. And we get an understanding of different investments, different stakeholders, different challenges within the hotel industry. And so that's a very insightful report to read through. Fact sheet, exhibit 3 on Highlight's proposed acquisition, which is of Comfy Stay Hotel. And within it, as accountants, we get quite excited because we also get some form of investment data, an exhibit within an exhibit, whereby we get to look at the net present value. Wow, that's some financial management information, which would be assumed knowledge within this syllabus. So when taking your SBL exam, in December 2018, if you weren't up to your standards on things like NPV or time value for money, or even things like the revenues and the cash flows of an investment criteria, you would probably look at that and be a little bit surprised or a little bit worried. But you guys are going to be extremely prepared. So you're probably looking at this data table thinking, come on, let's talk about the assumptions within this data table. Let's talk about the discount factors. Let's talk about what the net present value actually means. Is it reliable? What's the background behind it? Exhibit 4, Dealen's news article. So within this, we talk about how the actual company is perceived in the eyes of its external stakeholders, and maybe we get the impression that the media are being a little bit negative towards our potential acquisition of Comfy Stay. So we need to come up with a way of how we would address that. Exhibit 5, senior management team briefings, a very nice, a very straightforward, actually, should I say, set of notes summarized with different individuals. So we've got the executive, which is Bernie Verks. We've got the sales and marketing director, which is Jay Brown. Operations director, which is Thomas Myers. Elizabeth Fox, which is the finance director, and some notes around the discussion in which they're having with regards to the Comfy Stay hotel chain and their reaction to the negative publicity of the Dealand newspaper. Exhibit 6, board meeting minutes. It talks about the individuals who attended. It gives you an agenda item. So one of the agenda items is disruptive technology. Another agenda item is information systems and risk control. And as I alluded to earlier, one of your requirements is to prepare slides for a presentation, and whereby you discuss the risks that are given, and they have given you 3 key risks in Appendix 1. A lack of focus on an IT and information system strategy. I'll try to do that properly. An IT and information system strategy. Number 2, cyber and data security. And number 3, business continuity threats. So we will now take a little walk into requirement 1. Naturally, I will just have a glance at the question panel, make sure everything's running smoothly, and do continue to use the question panel as you have done over the last 3 evenings. It's been very engaging, and it's really fantastic to see some familiar faces. I like saying faces. It's probably not faces, familiar names. So thank you very much. So hi guys. Let's get stuck into the walkthrough, and you guys now know what you're doing. For anybody who's not been on the webinar live before, please use the question panel. It really does help to engage, and I'll give you chance and opportunities to ask questions at periodic breaks as we go through this evening. So, first things first. The requirement. And I've already split it into different colors. So I've used my highlighter, I've put some comments on there as well. And I'm showing you how I do an active read and a plan. And I'm going to do it quite pragmatically. Number 1, the Board of Highlight is currently looking to develop the Highlight business model into Vilandia. That's an interesting name of a country. A developing country with good growth potential. Okay. However, as operating in a difficult country would be As operating in a different country would be a new strategic direction for Highlight, the FD has stated that before any such strategic consideration, it is important to understand the key factors in its home country of D-Land, which has driven Highlight's success. And immediately, I start to think about maybe how I would like to structure my answer, and when things like this pop up, what sort of syllabus and academic knowledge do I have retained in my brain that might help to support the structure of this type of requirement. And so next to that, I've put a little thinking emoji just for pure comical purposes, for illustration and presentation purposes, and I've wrote the term Porter's diamond. Now, I have for the last 3, and I will continue for the next 2 evenings, stressed that models are not essential. They certainly are not, but you will have an education background where you have studied the models. So it does not hurt if they do fit without forcing them to look at potentially using them whilst doing your answer plan. Requirement A, the Chief Business Analyst, so this is your boss, has asked you to prepare briefing notes. What are briefing notes? And I don't mean to come across a little bit brash, but they are short, concise notes that give an overview and a bit of direction to the person reading them. So these are for the FD, so they need to be written in a senior business leadership professional language. For the consideration of the next board meeting, so if I was handed a set of briefing notes, I would expect them to be short, concise, to the point, well structured with subheadings which are underlined, so I can look at them in the board meeting or maybe minutes before the board meeting and get a good understanding of the key factors that have enabled Highlight to be successful in its home country of D-Land. Professional skills marks are available for demonstrating analysis skill, in investigating and considering information from a range of sources. So therefore, with my little magnifying glass, I am now going to take us and have a look through Exhibit 1, the executive statement, a report on the chief executive statement, a report on the performance of Highlight, and Exhibit 2, D-Land's Hotel Industry Report, which will hopefully provide me with the necessary backing and understanding to be able to answer this question. If I just take a look at part B as well, the Board of Highlight has identified an existing chain of hotels called Comfy Stay, located in Vilandia, which it is considering the acquisition. The Chief Business Analyst has passed you a fact sheet, so that's Exhibit 3, which is prepared containing data relating to the proposed acquisition. What do you have to do? Using the fact sheet referring to the above, any other relevant information, so therefore you can still use Exhibits 2 and Exhibits 3, prepare a report, so we know what a report looks like, to, from, date, subject, introduction, sections with subheadings and a nice close. Prepare a report for the Finance Director which evaluates the proposal to acquire Comfy Stay hotel chain. Oh, now, evaluations. And given the size of the mark allocation, so 16 marks is a lot, you would be looking to write a considerable amount here. And it's actually a very large requirement overall. 39 marks would be over an hour, so 70 minutes, an hour and 10 of writing time. So preparing your answer in continuous prose. So you take the 1.8 times it by 39, you get roughly 70 minutes. You also get professional skill marks for evaluating by giving a balanced and objective appraisal of the relevant information relating to the proposed acquisition of Comfy Stay. Excuse me. I love an evaluation, but that's probably because I spend a lot of time talking about them and doing them with my students. I am hoping that when you do your exam, you get a requirement which asks you to evaluate, because you will be given a brilliant opportunity here to show the examiner that you can write more than one-sided arguments. You can write from both sides of an opinion, and therefore ultimately this question, if you were to boil it down to a simple sort of understanding, it's saying, tell me what's good about the acquisition of Comfy Stay and how it fits in with our current highlight business model, and tell me what's maybe not so good. Now, I have put the emoji with a thinking face and an SAF next to it, and that is a model, and I don't really want to call it a model because it's not, it's just 3 letters. That is a structure that can help students expand their points when asked to evaluate strategies. So SAF is something we will talk through, and I would probably scribble that down on my requirement, and I would be reading Exhibits 1, 2, and 3, and I would be asking myself, does Comfy Stay look like a suitable acquisition for highlight? The A stands for, so the S stands for suitable, the A stands for acceptable. So you would be considering potentially the stakeholders that you are reading around. So would the stakeholders want to actually see you invest in another country and in another organization through acquisition? And then the F is feasibility, and that's effectively asking, can we do it? Do we have enough money? Do we have the resources? So it's not just financial, it's also the actual operational resources to go ahead, buy another operating hotel and move forward and get it set up successfully in the way that we operate, but in another country with different cultures. So an SAF is a nice way of providing structure to a strategic evaluation, and is possibly one that you would find useful. But that's not to say you have to use an SAF, and likewise, just in the previous slide, it's not to say you have to use a Porter's Diamond. Make sure that you are getting used to the active reading, and I think that you've got the understanding now. So some people have asked about what is an SAF. So Sajid, hopefully I've answered the question. Let me know that you've understood SAF, and if you need more detail, don't worry, we'll be talking through it in a little bit more. And Yolanda has quite well done, Yolanda, said that the Porter's Diamond is used to assess a nation's competitive advantage. So some really good insight there. Thank you very much for throwing that in the question box. Active reading, a term used to try and explain to you how you can effectively read and plan. You would read the requirement before reading the case and the exhibits, and search through the scenario and the exhibits for the most relevant information. Exhibit 1, Maybe let's take an understanding who is the chief exec. It's Bernie. Hi, Bernie. A nice, a very good professional photo there as well, looking very astute. This is a report on the performance for the year end 30th of June 2008. Bernie believes that Dealand's Highlight is the most popular brand of hotel in Dealand, and he would be correct in terms of understanding hotel, in terms of hotel numbers. It is a strength of our brand, along with our superb hotel staff, who deliver great service every day. So this is actually nice to see, and I intentionally did this. We went from a case study like Railco, where we were maybe not having happy customers, to a case study in Highlight, where we've got good quality customer service and hopefully happy customers. He argues that this service will underpin the future growth of the organisation. We continue to deliver market-leading customer experiences and the best choice of locations and great value for money. This is probably one of their additional key strategic advantages. Which said in the introduction, they're located next to airports, city centres and main tourist attractions. So they've got a very good logistical spread of hotels, 510 hotels, 46,000 rooms. We offer the widest choice of locations, 20% more than our nearest competitor, and this means our guests are able to stay closer to their destination. Another year of strong sales and profit growth. So that gives you the turn for the successful nature of this organisation. So unlike in our previous case study where we had a business which looked like it was struggling to manage its costs, we've now got an organisation which looks like it's being a positive organisation and doing really well. This has been a record year in terms of customer satisfaction. We employ nearly 11,000 people and have rising profits. The financial year for 2008 saw a growth of 9.1% on previous year's $1,072 million. So that's a significant amount of revenue. That is a massive amount of revenue for this organisation. Excuse me. We achieved 9.5% growth in our underlying pre-tax profits of 236 million, and this growth in profit has produced a strong operating cash flow, which has supported capital investment in the business. So we've got a considerable amount of cash. Just that's something you want to be aware of, because we are considering an acquisition. So in doing so, we would need to consider how we were going to finance an acquisition. Well, it sounds like we've got a bit of money in the bank. So we potentially have got a positive retained earnings and positive cash flow here. The hotel room occupancy remains high, with an average room occupancy of nearly 80%, so 79.5%, which is a significant amount of hotel occupancy. So that's really good. So for all of these 46,000 rooms, they've got nearly 80% of them filled over the year. Wonderful. If we have a look at the second part, a continued commitment to investment. There is a continuing growth in the budget hotel market as luxury and mid-price sectors decline. Interesting. So what we're seeing in Dealand is that the budget hotels are doing really well, but luxury and mid-price sectors are not doing so well. Maybe it's a social taste for the people of Dealand and those who are traveling to Dealand. Maybe they want the budget hotels, or maybe that's an underpin in terms of maybe economics and disposable income of individuals. So maybe they've not got as much disposable income, so when they do want to travel, maybe whether it's social or it could be business travel, they're deciding to use Highlight instead of a luxury hotel chain because they're being more cost conscious. Highlight has invested 80 million in refurbishment and upgrading the customer's digital experience. Our website welcomes 80% of our customers who choose to book with us, which choose to book directly with us, giving us significant competitive advantage. So that's really good to hear. They've embraced their digitalization, they've embraced their online platform, and it's shown very much successful in terms of revenue and business competitive advantages. However, so it's a bit of a change of turn here. The environment in which we operate is evolving. Competitor dynamics are challenging and changing, both traditional and disruptive channels. Customers are demanding more value and greater quality. Technology is developing quickly, especially digitally, with cost structures under pressure. There is growing need to focus on productivity and efficiency. So they're also conscious of cost control, like all organizations will be. So that's something to bear note to. The KPIs, I've highlighted in green the ones they've actually hit, so fantastic. And then I've also highlighted in pink or red, the ones they've not. But overall, I would argue this is significant KPI positive sort of outlook. They've split them between shareholders, customers, staff, and the environment. So they're taking quite a balanced scorecard type of approach. So they're not just considering revenue and pre-tax profits. They're also considering, what do our customers think? How satisfied are they? Are we having a return visit, therefore repeat purchases? Because ultimately, you guys will be aware when you like something, you buy it again, you go back. So therefore, are our customers going back again, and they've hit the target of, well, they've achieved the target, and some with 47%. Where they've got two red sort of negatives, and they're not massively negative, is their staff retention rates are below target, only by 3%. But nevertheless, it's a point to note, given that highlights stress that they believe that their staff are a significant asset. They invest in their training and their development. So if you were a staff member and you were extremely well trained, you maybe are being poached by competitors, or on the other hand, maybe the staff don't feel as valued as they potentially are led to believe. Although having said that, they do pay above the national minimum wage. So it's maybe not a massive issue, but the target needs to be achieved if we are to go and meet that KPI. Staff training, significantly more. Commitment to the environment. It's nice to see an organisation with a sustainable, conscious footprint. So carbon emissions, their target is 3%, and the reduction has only been 2.4. This might be points to note and some linkages when we consider when purchasing a second hotel chain in another country, and whether they can meet our sustainability targets and the environment targets. And also, we've done really well in terms of meeting and exceeding our target in recycling. I'm sure many of you will continue to stay in hotels, and when you do stay in hotels, there is often a little sign in the bathroom saying where's the effect around your sort of laundry and towels, whether or not you want to actually get them washed every day. So think about the practical ways in which hotels try to minimize their environmental footprint, and maybe that might be useful when discussing this in Highlights case study. A focus for the future. So Bernie's now moving forward and talking about how the business is going to grow. And this is important to be aware of because it does directly relate to requirement 1A. We have identified 4 key strategic themes within our brand for us to be successful. So focus on growth and innovation in our core highlight business. We must improve our digital capability to ensure we stay ahead of the rapidly changing environment. Now, one of your requirements, if you can remember back our quick glance at them, was around disruptive technology, and it looks very much so that we want to embrace disruptive technology, and that would be in line with one of our 4 key strategic themes. Number 2, focus on strengths and to grow internationally. So the acquisition that we are about to evaluate for requirement 1B, well, is very much in line with our strategic direction. So we want to buy or look to acquire another hotel chain in another country, and this does meet our strategic target. Reading the last part, we will produce the highest returns to match our highest expectations of quality, value for money, and commitment to staff and sustainability. So here they're giving a little bit of a nod of the hat to their shareholders in terms of returns, their staff in terms of the service, the environment in terms of emissions, and their customers as well in terms of the actual customer satisfaction and expectations of quality. Our key strategic aim here in terms of number 3, focus on supporting future growth through investment in technology and staff. So not only have they got a continuous investment through their website and on refurbishment, they also want to invest in annual skills and development programs. So they're saying they're putting aside $10 million. That's a significant amount of money to develop their staff. We welcome the introduction of the new Dealand National Living Wage, which we implemented 6 months in advance of the government's launch date. So wow, not many organisations, in my opinion, do that. My experience with national minimum wage very much comes from the UK, and when I worked in the UK, there was not many businesses that actually, when there was an increase in the national minimum wage, went ahead and implemented it 6 months early. That shows really good social sustainability, social impact, and social consciousness of this organisation. Number 4, on sustainability, we continue to develop investment in sustainability and environmental management systems to reduce our wastage, decrease our carbon dioxide emissions, and work towards becoming a carbon neutral business. Just to sign off, Bernie Vokes. Bernie Vokes is the Chief Executive. Fantastic. So thank you, Bernie. Moving into Exhibit 2. This is a hotel industry report created by a professor who is the chief analyst at Dealand's Travel and Hospitality Institute. Now, this will allow you to help give a better understanding of how we are going to answer requirement 1A, as well as your deeper understanding of highlighting its initial strategic report from Bernie previously. Tourism has continued to thrive in Dealand, and there is a continued global recession. So immediately, and I wish I had a little, I don't have, unfortunately, I'll try and highlight it there. I would love an exclamation mark. This to me represents Alex's brain going ping. That's important because weren't we talking about potential reasons as to why budget hotels are doing really well? Well, here we have it. The budget hotels are probably a better option for everybody because of a global recession. So within a global recession, business travel and social travel, so holidays, recreational travel, we often look to reduce costs, but still try and do the things we enjoy or we need to do for business. So that's probably why a budget hotel is doing well, because it's become our preferred option. The hotels are seeing an average rise in visitors of 8%. Dealand has a highly developed hotel and travel industry. Both online travel agents and traditional high streets thrive in Dealand. Online hotel booking websites and price comparison websites are driving business. So there's comparison websites that you might be familiar with. I often use these. I'm sure you guys do, and I'm be careful that I can't, give away, but I'm sure they're generic brand ones. So and there's one that pops up on the advertisement all the time saying you can find the cheapest hotel. I think it's Travago. You might have that in your country. And then there's also TripAdvisor and things like that, where you get a comparison of the hotels and you try and find the one that suits your needs. So we've got customers now wanting more flexible pricing options as well. I'm just going to clear off that highlight. Moving on to the continued investment within Exhibit 2, Dealand's government continues to invest in national infrastructure, particularly a new airport opening in Borea. Wow, now that's something I would like to pay particular reference to, and I would like to consider whether Highlight has a hotel near this airport, and if it doesn't, it probably should, given its business model is to be near major infrastructure and logistical, take advantage of logistical opportunities. Borea is Dealand's second largest city. So this generates an additional 2.5 million international visitors last year, and approximately 80% of them visiting Dealand for leisure. Next, sort of moving on as well in terms of the investment, both in addition to both national and regional levels, investment in has been high in road and rail network development. So again, it sounds like Dealand's really supporting and complementing the hotel industry. This has also led to a growth in business activity within the economy, which has created more opportunities and a highly competitive environment. Moving down a little bit now, where we talk about competition, National competition remains intense, but both Water Bay Leisure and ZZ Hotel Group, two of Dealin's most long-established luxury hotel chains, have both gone out of business this year. Well, that again is another correlation or another causation as to maybe linking it back to the global economic recession. People are not wanting to use Water Bay Leisure or ZZ Hotel Groups or ZZ Halls Group because maybe they're too expensive and they'd rather stay in a hotel chain, a budget hotel chain like Highlight. This is a stark warning for those Dealand hotels which remain or which do not remain competitive and customer focused. Last 2 points. DD's hotel chains now offer online booking facilities, and also there are a multitude of app platforms which help to allow guests to communicate and manage their bookings more effectively. Now, from the perspective of this exam, they refer to applications, and this could be regarded as some form of disruptive technology. How has this impacted our stakeholders? So stakeholder, anybody who has an interest and can affect or be affected by an organisation or industry. So Dealers Travels continue to be highly demanding. They expect high standards but also value for money, with 70% of them willing to shop around for the best deal and best location. The hotel and travel industry has been hit hard in many countries by the recession, given that there is a number of, there was, let's recap on those names. I want to make sure we've got them because when we are producing an answer, we want to use these organisations as an illustration. So Water Bay Leisure and ZZ Hotels, or ZZ Halls Group, come on Alex, ZZ's Hall Group might be worth keeping and holding a note of, because when you're applying the case, it adds strength to your answer of using the organisations you're referring to. The government also continues to value the hotels and travel industry. Nearly half of the universities of Dealand offer travel and tourism qualifications, which is highly regarded throughout the region. So if we are now thinking, why is the hotel industry in Dealand being so advantageous? Why is it so strong? And linking it back to requirement 1A, here is a potential related and supporting industry which could help us provide an understanding of why we've got a lot of staff and a lot of demand within our industry in Dealand. There is also the government supporting this. So the government has recently announced further investment and tax breaks for employers who offer job creation schemes in a wide range of industries, which includes travel and tourism. So they've got a government which supports them. Moving through Exhibit 2, we've only got two more slices of this. Customers want outstanding and personalised experiences. So personalisation of communication through multiple electronic platforms, that's a form of disruptive technology. The customers are obviously becoming more demanding. The recruitment and retention of the right people. So this links back to why Highlight should be concerned with not hitting their staff retention target. So therefore, we've got to consider that from a strategical point of view. Many of hotels in Dealand are finding it increasingly difficult to recruit and retain individuals with the right blend of interpersonal and technical skills. The hotel sector has the highest staff turnover rate of any industry, with staff turnover rates being as high as 60%. Now, if we to evaluate our staff turnover, I think it was around, was it 55%, 52%? We are under the 60%, so that's not a bad thing. Moving forward and wrapping this up, the changing competitive dynamics. The first point in pink, there's a lot of mergers and acquisitions, so it seems to be the trend within the industry, seems to be one of the organization's competitive objectives to gain market share through vertical integration and vertically integrating their product offering. So business operating in the budget sector also wants to buy mid-range or luxury hotel segments and vice versa. In relation to what I talked and tipped my hat to earlier, the cases version of Airbnb, Rent a Room does not own a single hotel room or any other lodgings it advertises. So this is very much an Airbnb type organization. So they've called it Rent a Room. Instead, they operates its online marketplace, enabling travelers to lease or rent short-term lodgings including holiday rentals, homestays, and hotel rooms. Just the last point here, and then we're going to look at how we're going to attack the requirement. So, for many dealer and hotel operators, these are exciting but challenging times, and those who survive will be those that keep up with the pace of change in the industry. Requirement 1, Part A. You could use a Porter's Diamond, you do not have to. I would like you to go through this requirement, and I am going to actually give you a significant amount of time to do this. So I'm going to give you 10 minutes to prepare a brief note, so just a brief note answer plan, highlighting the key points that you want to raise for the finance director in a board meeting. So imagine you're handing this document to the FD, and I want you to realistically, and if I was to put this in Alex's language, tell me the key factors for why Highlight has been so successful in D-Land. And you can pull the information from Exhibit 1, Exhibit 2. As I say, I am giving you 10 minutes for this, so I will jump back in continuously, but I will expect to debrief this question with my answer plan going through the marking scheme at 8 o'clock. So as I naturally have a quick look in the question panel, one individual who I'm not sure, maybe they were late to the session, has asked, do we have to use the model? No, you do not have to use a model at all. If you do not want to use a Porter's Diamond, that is perfectly fine. You could simply structure your report by having, a bit of a prose reason. So you're looking at the reasons why it's been so successful and use a subheading approach. It just sometimes helps if you want to use a model, but as I stressed, you do not need to. Thank you for those who've realised that I've got my staff retention and staff turnover rates a little bit muddled up. Just to clarify, staff turnover, individuals are saying it's 48%, so that's actually really good, much lower than the 60%. So thank you very much. Cheers, guys. So hopefully you guys are drafting up a bit of a plan, scribbling a few things down, talking about maybe the actual strong infrastructure. That's probably a good reason why they've done so well. You might also be talking about maybe the home demand for a budget hotel, the economic conditions. So just a little bit of food for thought for you there, guys. So yeah, I see a few other things popping into the question panel now. Some people are talking about, yes, some people are using a Potsdam if they want to talk about factor conditions. Yeah, I've got some really good answers throwing in. What else have we got in there? The location of the hotels is a key factor, i.e. strategic position. Ismail, well done. Developed economy, yeah, Sanika, outstanding. Atiba, I'm going to assume you've not been on any of the other webinars. Yes, it is perfectly fine to use a highlighter on the question paper. In fact, if you don't, you'd be doing yourself a disservice. We call it a lightsaber in my classes because it allows you to cut through and add colour to the necessary information in the case study. Yolanda, thank you for your detailed answer. Furkan as well. I'm just going to have a read through them, and I hope everyone else is doing a really good answer plan, basically saying why has Highlight been so successful in Dealand. Yeah, Furkan. So there you've talked about the location being a very big factor, the economy being a factor there as well. So the economy and the driving the demand for a budget hotel, as well as the customers, excellent customer service has led to them being very successful. So there's obviously availability of resource of human beings that are very skilled in the hotel sector. I wonder where they get that from. Remember to still be using the so what approach in your mind. So they've got good customer service. So what? How have they got that? Oh, well, they've got that because many of the universities in Dealand offer courses, degrees, academics in travel and tourism, which will ultimately lead to better skilled and better prepared staff. That's why they've got good customer satisfaction. Or at least it's a variable as to why they've got good customer satisfaction. Got a few throwing in now. Just going to have a read through yours, Yolanda. Thank you very much. So Yolanda's talked about education. Fantastic. Related to supporting industries like the airport, city centres, transport. Having a highly competitive environment has allowed Highlight to become market leading. So more competition ultimately gets rid of the weaker, less competitive organisations, which has allowed Highlight to thrive as well. Thank you, Yolanda. Paul, I'm just going to have a little read through yours. Thank you, Sanika, as well. Yeah, so many of you are seeing the patterns. Right, I'll just give you another minute on this one, and then I'll walk through my answer plan. So just bear in mind, essentially what you are answering is why, what are the factors that have enabled Highlight to be so successful in Dealand? Some of you are putting things like strong cash position. That's not a factor that's allowed Dealand, that has allowed Highlight to be competitive. That's just as a subsequent, as a result of them being competitive and being successful. They've got lots of cash, but having cash isn't one of the reasons. It isn't something I'd be giving marks for. Right then, guys, so hopefully you can hear me and hopefully you've had a good plan. And I take my hat off, I commend everybody who wrote in the question panel. There was some really good, insightful plans in there. Some of you used Porter's Diamond if you wanted to. Some of you just used the more sort of pragmatic approach of using different areas of the case study. We've done the answer plan, nice little graphic there for you. I should have maybe clicked on that earlier. So here we go. Brief notes. Factors enabling highlights success in D-Land. For the attention of the finance director at the next board meeting. So key factors. Factor conditions. These are physical resources, human resources, knowledge and infrastructure. So within this D-Land country, there is strong infrastructure, there is the new airports, and there is the education system, which has helped to allow Highlight to be so successful. The strong infrastructure in terms of the transport links, that's a factor condition. The new airport is a factor condition, so that is a resource within D-Land and its home nation, and therefore 2.5 million extra visitors, tourists, I believe it was, every year. That's going to increase the hotel's, hotel's capacity. It's not hotel's capacity, hotel's actual occupancy. And the education system is a factor condition because it's a human resource. So they've got highly educated individuals through strong universities, which has allowed them to recruit and retain very good levels of staff, which then leads to a better quality of service for the customers, which ultimately allows for high customer satisfaction. You can see my brain naturally running on a bit of a sort of so what mentality, the expansion of each point. If you can remember yesterday, the PEC approach, make your point, expand upon your point by explaining what you mean, and then comment by talking about the impact or the effect that it has in terms of, in this instance, I was talking there about customers and its ultimate competitive advantage as a result of having good customer service. The demand conditions, so strong local home demand often leads to, and not often, certainly leads to a competitive advantage. Porter's Diamond from a theoretical point of view is one of my favorite models because we get to talk about all sorts of different things in terms of, I often become quite nationally stereotypical. Why is Italy synonymous with fashion and clothes? Why is Germany synonymous with luxury cars and things like that? So in this instance, Highlight, we're asking, demand conditions, why are they so good at hotels? And it's because there is a strong local demand within their actual home country. The people of D-Land demand high customer service, demand a good quality experience, demand a good quality hotel stay. They are sophisticated customers, and those such as Waterbay and ZZ Halls have gone out of business, which means that ultimately the demand in that country, the demand condition has shifted towards more budget, no frills types of organizations like Highlight. Related and supporting industries. So this is a synergy between complementary industries. So we've got synergy here between the travel companies, pricing comparison websites, and the overall economy. Because of the overall economic conditions, being a global recession, Highlight being a budget hotel is well positioned to take advantage of that. Firm strategy, structure, and rivalry, the organizational structure and management. So Highlight is perfectly placed to exploit the overall market conditions. Its strategy is value for money, and therefore it has a great amount of competitive advantage. So the competitive rivalry within the industry is very high because of the demands of the customers, but because of the structure of the organization and their strategy being value for money, they are positioned to take advantage of it. Now, what's quite nice about the marking scheme for this particular question, for this particular script, is it gives you a significant amount of listing as to what you could write. So what I'm going to do is just move on to the next page, which is the marking scheme. And it tells you get up to 2 marks. So there's that 2 marks sort of popping up again. For each relevant point made in discussing the factor which enables highlight to be successful in its own country. And what's beautiful about this is I can't even hazard how many there is. In fact, let's do this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 26, I believe I just counted, and forgive me if I've got it slightly wrong. I'm not an auditor anymore. 26 possible options there, and you get up to 2 marks for each relevant point made in discussing the factors which enables highlight to be successful in its own country. And there's nothing in the marking criteria which even remotely discusses the need to use Porter's diamond. So if you didn't use Porter's diamond, you used a subheading approach, you would not get marked less or more. You would just need to go through and work through your answer. Given there are 16 marks, you would only need 8 of these. Now, what I would stress is that they probably want to be somewhat spread out. And that's maybe where the Porter's diamond does help, because it allows you to generate ideas. And that's what models are there for, to generate ideas around what you're thinking around. So some of these relate better to factor conditions. Some of them relate better to demand conditions. Some of them help and fit quite neatly into the related and supporting industries. And some of them also fit into firm strategy, structure and rivalry. But what you can hopefully take away from 1A in terms of the marking scheme initially is that there is a considerable amount of options, a considerable amount of things you could write, but you would actually only need to write about 8 of them. Which brings me a lot of comfort. If I was a student and as a lecturer, it brings me a lot of comfort, because what it tells me is that you would naturally be able to score quite high on this type of requirement. If we move further into my presentation, so I just get back to my normal click, and we look at these, I believe it's analysis skill marks, and with 3 on the marking grid. And I'm going to talk you through this now. Again, this marking scheme is somewhat, I'm going to say, somewhat more detailed than the ones we were using for Railco. So this is an advantage again, another positive. And I've pulled out some of the actual walkthrough of doing not at all, not so well, quite well, and very well. So not well, you would score 0, and then not so well, you would score 1, quite well, you would score 2, and very well, you would score 3, and this is for an analysis. So if you would get nothing is probably where we'll start. 0 marks available. They have failed to effectively use or consider the appropriate and relevant data sources presented in the exhibits, particularly exhibits 1 and 2. So if you didn't use exhibits 1 and 2, you would most likely not score very many marks for analysis. So I suppose none of you are going to do that, because now you know full well when you're doing your active reading and planning, you pull the information from the exhibits. So it would be kind of hard to answer this question without using the exhibits. If we move over, you know that you get a slight mark, but only limited. So didn't use many data sources, merely restated the information. So this is giving you a mark for analysis because you did read the exhibits, you did use them, but you maybe only did your point out of your PEC. So you didn't expand, you didn't comment. So if you only get the point, you only repeat the case, you wouldn't score very highly in analysis. Quite well has attempted to demonstrate investigation analysis rather than merely restating the case. So this is where you have expanded, you have developed your point successfully. And then if you've done very, very well, you would get 3 marks for analysis. The candidate has used exhibits, presented a sound and well-considered analysis, and investigation of most relevant information is presented. So again, this is where you would do a full PEC and you would get 3 marks for being well at analysis. Now, what's really nice about this marking scheme is it gives you a little bit of a more detailed example. So I'm just going to give you a moment, maybe just 60 seconds, to have a little read through this examples. So they correlate upwards of where you get nothing, you get 1, you get 2, and you get 3. So bear with me a second while I give you a minute to have a look through them. So hopefully you find that a little bit useful. I know I have. I'm just going to see if anyone's thrown anything in here. So yeah, so back to the actual marking scheme and particularly discussing how you get lots of analysis marks. We'll just draw our attention to this top one here. So provides little structure to their answer. If you do not structure it in the appropriate format, and this is why structure is so important, so it was brief notes, you would not score any professional marks. Whereas if you did structure it, you put it in a correct format, you pulled things from many different exhibits, so the hotel industry report, you also looked at the chief exec's report, and the candidate recognised that there is a clear link between the two pieces of information, and also considers that other organisations have not responded as successfully as highlighted. So that's where we talked about the two competitors. So ZZ holds, I think it was it Waterbeer? Let me get this right, because for some reason that one won't stick in my brain. Yeah, Waterbeer. Oh, it did stick in my brain. So fantastic. So that draws me to the sort of end of the walkthrough of 1A, and as you can probably tell, it is a significantly larger requirement than the ones we were looking at previously. I believe that's a natural pause, so what we'll do is we'll take a little break. So I'm just going to exit the PowerPoint and I'm just going to pop in Word. We'll take a little breather. So the time per my watch is 20, we'll go 2012, that's in Pakistani time, so we will break out, and oh, if I could spell break, I'm sure that's not the most pressing thing, and we'll be back in 15 minutes, so at 2027, let me expand that so you can see it. So there we have it. Let's take a nice little 15-minute loo break. We'll take a breather, grab yourself a refreshment, a cup of tea or a drink, and we will come back and look at the rest of this requirement in a quarter of an hour. On a break, if you do think of anything you want to ask, throw it in the question panel. I'll review it as we go along, and I can address it when we get back into the presentation. So thank you. Hey folks, just 10 more minutes on break. Hope you're having a nice evening, and thank you for everyone who's participating in the question panel. It really does help to engage. So just a little bit of gratitude from me. Some really good answers coming in from question or requirement 1A. It's really encouraging, and hopefully you're getting some value out of this evening's session as well as the other ones. When we get back, for those who are interested, we will be doing a Kahoot, but not immediately. We're going to carry on with requirement 1B. Maybe then we'll have a bit of fun and games with a Kahoot. So I know that's something that went down really well the other evening. So we'll go about doing another one this evening as well. Speak to you shortly. Bye-bye. Hey folks, just 5 more minutes on break. As I said, thank you again for everyone's involvement this evening so far. When we get back, we're going to debrief requirement 1B. So if anybody's thinking, oh, right, I might as well have a little read, by all means, have a read through Exhibit 3 and requirement B, and we'll be walking through that after we get back. All right, cheers. Right then, folks, it's give or take nearly time to get back in, so let's do this. I'll just unpause my screen, go back into the presentation, and away we go. So thank you so far. We are now going to have a look at requirement 1B, and we'll be talking through how to evaluate a structure to giving you a little bit more expansion of your points for your evaluation. And it's a really nice question. It's again where we're going to be looking at a fact sheet. So we've got some data to analyze, and this will take us a little bit of time for this evening. So yeah, requirement 1B. The Board of Highlight has identified an existing chain of hotels called Comfy Stay in Vilandia. We're going to buy them, and we're going to look to buy them, and we need to check out the fact sheet. That is Exhibit 3. By using the fact sheet and any other relevant information. And it's ironic, but I will just stress this. Some students naturally look at this and go, right, we're just going to do loads of numbers and then ignore everything else. So they don't take into consideration anything they've just read. And it's a shame, really, because they'll have used exhibits 1 and 2 to give themselves answers and generate ideas for requirement 1B, but they then don't think about how that could link back in to the requirement 1A, sorry, and then they don't think about that link into requirement 1B. So keep in mind that you've already got a good understanding of the actual highlight company. You've got a good understanding of the industry that the hotels are operating in. Essentially, what you will be doing is creating a report, and I'll give you a bonus point if you can remember what a report format looks like. So I'm expecting something to pop into the question panel now. So if you could tell me what a report format looks like, that'd be awesome. So yeah, guys, what does a report format look like? Because it should just be repeating over in your brain by now. I've said it a plethora of times. Hey, Sanika was first in the bag. Furkan, Nasir, Yolanda. 2, from, date, introduction, subheadings, which are the sections, and a conclusion. And given this is asking you to evaluate, a conclusion is essentially needed. Thank you very much, guys. So 2, from, date, subject, introduction, subsections, conclude. What do we need to put in there? We need to evaluate the proposed acquisition of Comfy Stay Hotel, and we could do that by using an SAF. But before we do that, let's take a look at Exhibit 3 and talk about what is actually in Exhibit 3 that might be of interest to us, and I'll talk you through some of the numbers that I've scribbled. So, Exhibit 3, a fact sheet relating to highlights proposed acquisition target, prepared by the Chief Business Analyst, so prepared by your boss. Key business/industry data. So if we just talk through this, Comfy Stay is a family-run business. Now, I wonder why that could be interesting. And you know, at the end of the day, the examiners don't write these things for fun. Well, maybe they do, but they don't write them for the good of them, help themselves. They write them so you could use them. And I would argue that that would jump out to me because I would be thinking, well, Highlight is a listed organization. There's some operational and cultural issues that maybe need to be dealt with, or operational and cultural, what's it, problems, but hurdles they need to deal with. And it's lacked investment for the last 10 years, which is again significantly different to Highlight. Highlight's had 80 million invested in it recently, in sort of tidying the place up. What do we call it? Refurbishment and a website, and then had another 10 million put aside for staff development and training. So again, a significant difference there. It has 20 hotels in the chain and has been operating for over 18 years, and they are all located in main coastal resorts of Zealandia. Okay, so only 20 hotels, not a problem. That's not a big deal. We've got 510, so we can add that. It's been going 18 years, so that's a good thing in my opinion. 18 years shows longevity in a very competitive industry, and the fact that they're on coastal resorts, that's maybe a point for exception, a point for consideration, given that the business model for Highland currently is predominantly focused on cities and tourist attractions. Maybe the coastal resorts, are they also tourist attractions? Does it fit in? The next one, though, is really not in line with our current business strategy. These are in the premium location, but in out-of-date facilities. These are mid-range hotels with some additional leisure facilities such as gyms and pools. We're not used to having these. So again, when I'm evaluating, I'm thinking, does it really fit in with my current business model? And the answer is it isn't so far. But that doesn't mean it's a bad thing. Remember, we're evaluating what are the good things as well. Well, it's not classed as a budget hotel. So that again is an ace, but that doesn't mean it's a write-off. Zealandia is 5,000 miles away from Dealand, quite a significant distance. In fact, it's around the same amount of miles it is from where I am in Dubai, all the way to the United Kingdom. So, you know, it's a significant distance, 7 hours flight minimum. Maybe 8 hours flight in this instance here. And it's a developing economy, so not an established economy. With low wages, that's not a problem for businesses. I mean, let's be honest, if as an accountant, you look at an acquisition, you say it's got low wages. But having said that, is that in line with Highlight's current business practices of paying the minimum wage or above the minimum wage prior to any legislative forcing them to do it? There is some evidence of poor employment practices, which is against highlights current ethical stance, and some evidence of underage labour minors. Ouch, that's not going to be good in the hotel industry. So that's not a good thing in terms of matching up to highlight. Having said that, Zealandia does have a thriving tourist industry. So there's a positive for us. And if I was weighing up on here, I would want to say these are good, these are not so good. That's the sort of approach we'd take in more professional language, should I say. Now, the evaluation of the data, and I've done quite a lot here, so we'll talk through it all, and I'm going to get my spotlight and pull out some of the key areas that I'd be probably interested in discussing. So this is an evaluation at the end of the day. So the initial investment is 80 million. With refurbishment costs of 10 million, so we have total costs of 90 million, a negative in cash flow, and a discount factor of 12%. So at 0.0 within our net present value sort of cash flow calculations, we're already out pocket by 90 mil. Now, what I'm going to draw your attention to straight away is this additional information. It is expected that some of Dealen's hotel managers would need to relocate to Zealandia. That's an assumption. Would you like to move 5,000 miles away from where you're established? Well, maybe, maybe not. Let's see. We do need to consider that. For approximately 3 to 12 months on a temporary basis to assist in training and developing the staff in the first year of operations, and will be required to carry out ongoing mentoring activities for the next 2 years. All right, so from an evaluate point of view, we've got maybe a hurdle, but we've also got an opportunity here to say that we are looking to imprint our high levels of staff training and therefore our levels of high customer service onto the acquisition target. So that's a good thing. Finance for the investment would be available through a combination of debt and equity, and bear in mind they've got significant cash flow in the business. It's got a positive amount of cash flow due to significant revenues and profitability, so they'll have a lot of equity, and if then they look to get some more debt so they could get out loans, given their current financial position and the overview that was given to us, it probably isn't going to be hard for us to get some form of long-term loan or even short-term loan in forms of debt financing. As we go along, points to be aware of. So there's the initial outlay of 90 million, and then we've got this environmental investment of 1 million each year. It's quite a nice round figure. Training costs of 3 million, then 1.5 million respectively. And then these operating costs, which increase pretty much on a regular increment. So we've got 21.6 mil for the first 2 years, and then 24.2 mil for the remaining 3 to 6 years. So all the assumptions I would be questioning, and hopefully getting into the sort of spirit of this now, is just to sort of ask how reliable is this information. Maybe this is the most reliable information, how much they're going to spend, but then how do we know what the training costs are going to be, and specifically how are we going to know about the revenues as well? Cash flows are discounted. I'd be interested again to understand why they've used a discount factor of 12. Bear in mind the discount factor is another term for cost of capital. So what they're saying is that the interest, the cost of this investment is 12% per year before they even make a profit. Let's have a look at the potential for profitability, and this is where your financial management knowledge comes back in. This 10.5 million of net present value is a positive, so this is really good. So when talking about your evaluation of your investment, this is a fantastic thing to see. We've got NPV of over 10.5 million, which as a pure financial management perspective, so if we were just going to consider numbers, you would argue as a positive, because a positive net present value, strictly speaking, represents in a basic form an increase in shareholder wealth, or sometimes is referred to as shareholder wealth maximization. If we were to do further analysis, this is a 13.2% return of the initial £80 million investment. I'm also now over in this chart. This is my payback period cumulative calculations. I'm interested as an investor how quickly I'm going to get my initial investment back. So to do that, I have done carried forward, sorry, cash flow, not carried forward, that's my T account knowledge coming in. Cash flow and cumulative cash flow. So in year 0, I have got a negative 90 million, and I've pulled that from here. And then I have used the figures of my present values in this column, and I have accumulated them, therefore deducted any positive cash flows from my initial negative outlay to effectively realize that in year 5, at some point through that year, I will get my return. So in year 5, I will get 2.8. So the calculation at the bottom. So we've got your year 6 cash flow of 13.769. Divide it by 12 months. That gives me a monthly average cash flow of 1.147. And then we figure out what's the remaining in this year 5. So we've got to actually pay off another 3.2 million. That would take 2.8 months. Now, for the purposes of payback, we round up. So that would be 3 months, and therefore our payback period is 5 years and 3 months. Now that's relevant because that might meet some of our investment criteria. So not only have we got a positive NPV, we then get our initial investment back after 5 years and 3 months. And if I was going to be deciding and evaluating an investment, I as an investor would want to know when I'm getting my money back. So that really leads me quite nicely. And if anybody's got any questions about the numbers and about my assumptions and the things I've been saying, please throw it in the question panel. But this leads me quite nicely to moving on to sort of you guys doing a bit of an answer plan. So remember, using the fact sheet and any other relevant information, so your knowledge from the case, excuse me, I don't know where my voice went then, your knowledge from the case, probably need a drink. Excuse me. Prepare a report for the finance director. So therefore the report must be in a report format, and I've given you the report format to start with, which evaluates the proposal to acquire the Comfy Stay Hotel. Now you could, if you want, use the suitability, acceptability and feasibility structure, or you could look at the pros and cons approach, which is one that would score you just the same amount of marks. So 16 marks in totality, 4 marks for evaluation. So if we just have a little think about what we're going to be looking for here, you get up to 2 marks for each relevant point for evaluating the proposal to acquire Comfy Stay. So I'd be looking for 8 things that you could write about, you could pack your way through. So 8 things as a minimum to get you those 16 marks. If you do it in the correct structure, in the correct tone and language, you would be able to give a balanced and an objective evaluation. You would then get 4 marks on top of that. That'll probably take you 10 minutes. So I will give you until 10 to 9 to come up with an answer plan on your own. And then I will help us along in that 10 minutes, just so we don't have stone cold silence. And also to try and illustrate that we can think of ideas together. So at 10 to 9, so in 10 minutes, I would appreciate it if there are quite a lot of things in the question box, and we'll talk through and debrief them as well. Right then, so there's a fair few things in the question panel. I'm gonna have a read through them while you guys still continue with your plan. So make sure you're doing the plan; it will really help. And sort of actively thinking, actively reading the exhibits again if you need to, pulling out some of the key bits as to maybe evaluating whether or not it's a good idea to buy this organisation of Comfy Stay. So a few people have talked about the financial aspects, which is good. So Sanika talking about maybe slight fluctuations can lead to a lower return due to maybe a change in cost of capital. I definitely think that would be a relevant thing to say when evaluating a potential investment. So yes, Sanika. But it doesn't always necessarily need to be completely focused around financial stuff. But you know, that's one element. Ebby, can we do an IRR? No, don't do an IRR. You would be spending too much time focusing and it'd probably take you too long. So don't do an IRR. A few people are talking about the culture, which is an interesting one. Yeah, the organisational cultures will differ. Husnain, thank you very much. You're the first person to look at it from a positive outlook. There is some encouraging signs from acquisition of Comfy Stay, thriving economy, premium locations, and a positive NPV. Outstanding. Do you know what? That's really made me happy because you've looked at it from an opposite perspective. You looked at it from a good perspective. So fantastic. Atiba, yeah, so you've talked about Comfy Stay as a family business. And I would like you to expand further on that in your own answer as well, which you have. So you've gone on to talk about cultural issues and the difficulties there. Husnain then has gone on to evaluate and look at the other side of the coin. So first started positively and now talking about some forms of issues or some forms of hurdles in terms of listed organisations, non-listed organisations, and the corporate governance surrounding them, and ethics as well. Yeah, there's a big question mark over this acquisition in terms of ethics and reputation. See a few people are talking about that. Yolanda, again, always doing really well there. Just having a read through yours. Nice introduction. We've gone in to discuss the suitability of the actual acquisition of Comfy Stay. So thank you. Say just tip of the hat there for talking about it being a mid-tier business as opposed to a budget business. And I'm just going to ask you this in a very polite way. So what? I want you to think about, so what? What's the implications of that? Why is that something you want to raise in your evaluation? So, question panel looks like it's slowing down a little bit, which is perfectly fine. If you do have anything else to add, thank you very much. And if I haven't read out your answer, it's not that there's anything wrong. And if there was anything wrong, I'd definitely raise it for you. Oh, there's a few other things I spoke too soon. Thank you, John. Thank you, Nasir. I'll just have a quick read of those. Yeah, John, good overview. Nice one. Thank you. Aisha talking there about core competencies and strategic capabilities. Yes, and hopefully you would be specific to the case using those terminologies around what highlights core competencies are, which are effectively customer service, and how they could ensure that they had the same core competencies when acquiring a new organization. They could do that through staff training. Yeah, Nasir again linking that in as a critical success factor, the staff, and certainly how they'd fall in place with Comfy Stay. So let's have a look at my answer plan, and then we'll take it from there. So we'll look at my answer plan. We'll look at the marking schemes, and we'll look at the marking schemes in terms of the points within it, and then the actual professional marks. 4 of them available for a balanced and objective appraisal of evaluation. And here we go. So, to, from, date, subject, introduction. This report will present an evaluation of the proposal to buy Comfy Stay hotel chain in the country of Zealandia. Firstly, you could use an SAF, you could use a good and bad pros and cons for and against structure. One of the first things I would have sort of talked about is the financial considerations. Now, just because I've got a heading for financial considerations doesn't mean that you couldn't have linked those in through every aspect of your SAF or in different aspects of your answer. This is just me thinking of an answer plan. So we could talk about the numbers. Do they add up? When discussing if something is suitable or not, we're really just asking, does the organization that we are looking to acquire or the decision and direction that we are looking to take fit our current strategic and cultural business model? We would then also want to consider whether it's acceptable both from a risk and stakeholder perspective, and whether it's feasible in terms of, do we have the resources, both financial and physical and human resources, to go out there, buy an organization in a different part of the world, 5,000 miles away, and create a success of it. To start with, the financial considerations. The net present value of 10.6 million is roughly equivalent to 13.2% of the 80 million initial investment, with a payback period calculated at 5 years and 3 months. So what? You've just done some numbers, Alex. You've shown the examiner you're a bit of a whiz kid when it comes to the numbers. Would you get any marks for that on itself? Nope. What you need to talk about is the reliability and viability of the data in Exhibit 3. All right, on the face of it, this is a positive NPV. It would maximize shareholder investments. It's a good payback period, but does that meet our investment criteria? But NPVs, forecasts, discount factors are all very subjective. I saw in the question panel earlier, and I'm going to try and find it now very quickly, somebody talking about the subjective nature of the actual assumptions. So we talked about, cost of capital. An individual talked about cost of capital and the fact that there can be fluctuations in the cost of capital as a result of small changes. One of the small changes could be foreign exchange risk. Zealandia operates a different currency, although the spreadsheet was given to you in your local currency, Zealandia operates a different currency. So if there is foreign exchange movements, that could severely affect the net present value outcomes. Also, transaction risks, the actual problems of trading in another country, and the risk that could lead to terms of, maybe fraud or potential issues with the transactions in each country from a banking perspective. So you've got to consider the risk profile of your financial considerations and the reliability of the information in that forecast. Now, put that aside, Moving forward, is Comfy Stay a suitable acquisition for us? Well, suitable stay, Comfy Stay is a hotel. So at first glance, it is kind of within our operating remit, but it is a mid-range, and we need to consider the impact of that on our brand, because currently we do very well as an organization because we are a successful budget, no frills organization. So how would the perception of that, how would that be dealt with in the market? Are we going to keep the gyms? Are we going to keep the swimming pools? Or are we going to get rid of them? Maybe they aren't something we want to be dealing with, potentially from an overheads or an image perspective. If we move down a little bit and I talk about consolidations in the marketplace being common, therefore the process or the strategy of an acquisition is quite suitable. And I pulled that information from the market report exhibit 2. So this is showing the examiner you aren't just looking at the financials, you are reading further. There's some geographical logistical issues, 5,000 miles away, Zealandia's national culture, and also many of you talked about the poor employment practices. So again, that's not necessarily a big raving massive positive, but it probably could be overcome. Potentially, given the day and age in which we are all working in a globalized economy, and right now the ACCAs and you guys being on this webinar are a perfect example of it. Many of you are in Pakistan, some of you are in America, some of you are in Leeds in the United Kingdom. So we're not having a problem working together here. So realistically, could we overcome this? Yes, we could. The last point, Comfy Stay being a family-based culture, change can be difficult. Many of you talked about that as well. So well done for highlighting that as a suitability issue when evaluating the acquisition of Comfy Stay. If we look at acceptability, so how would our stakeholders deal with us looking at buying a mid-tier hotel in a different part of the world, and what are the risks attached to this? So from an overall point of view, sensitivity analysis on the forecast would need to be done, but it doesn't mean we have to do it. And I just want to emphasize, there was an individual in the question, but I do forgive me, I have forgot your name and I didn't, please don't take offense, but your question was, should we do an internal rate of return calculation? There is no need to do any significant amount of calculatory work. You do not score highly in this exam for doing the numbers. So even in any other strategic business leader paper, you will see that there isn't a lot of marks for doing any form of technical or wizardry with numbers. Do some simple percentage changes, do some simple comparatives, really quick investment appraisals. What you are trying to do now is look at it from a high level, and you are giving this very much to a senior individual in a business, and they're not too worried about the nuts and bolts and the technicalities. Somebody else can do that for them. You're there to question the assumptions and the reliability of the information. So we would ask, as a senior individual in the business, whether we could do some sensitivity analysis, and how we could go about that would be maybe to change the cost of capital. So at what point do we go from having a positive net present value to a negative or a break even? And we might be wanting to ask to do that, but not to do that ourselves. We are not at that level anymore. Moving forward, what stakeholders would we be considering? Well, we would need to take into consideration the staff. The staff of both Highlight and Comfy Stay. How would our staff within our home country feel about flying 5,000 miles to go and train up for a period of 3 to 12 months some other organization's staff, which now technically is part of our acquisition. So therefore we would be training people with different cultures. And how would Comfy Stay feel about that? Because they've got their own internal processes and therefore their own ways of doing things. How would they feel? So we don't again need to go into much detail here, but you need to show the examiner you are considering it from various stakeholder perspectives, so staff being one of them. The shareholders, so how would your shareholders react to you purchasing an organization like Comfy Stay in a thriving tourist environment? They'd probably be quite happy in the broad spectrum. If you were to show them the positive NPV and argue that it would lead to a profitable outcome and a positive shareholder wealth maximization, your shareholders are likely to support this. Now, that's not to say they would all support this, but again, you are considering the stakeholders' claim. So stakeholder claim, what they want from your organization, and shareholders ultimately want positive wealth maximization. How would your customers feel about the acquisition of ComfyStay? So do your current customers really care? Well, they might do. They might think, oh, brilliant. I can now travel to another destination 5,000 miles away and get the same brilliant level of service that I get in my home nation or when I travel to D-Land. But also the customers of ComfyStay. How would they feel about a budget hotel chain purchasing a mid-tier, slightly old-run family hotel? Would they be happy? Would we retain those customers, or would they be necessary to look to change and go somewhere else? Community and media, so some more external stakeholders. We're going to be buying this hotel if we do acquire it, so there we are, and we would most likely need to do a refurbishment. We would need to we need to consider the community and maybe engage with them in terms of managing their expectations. Maybe there's going to be some disruption in terms of the renovation and the actual logistics of upgrading a hotel. So our neighbours and this passing by community, we'd need to take them into consideration. How would they feel about us buying a hotel? And the media. Now, the media is already, in the further exhibit, not being too polite about your potential acquisition of ComfyStay. And if you have taken the liberty of reading ahead, you will realise that they have drawn a huge pin or a huge problem with you looking to buy an organisation in a questionable employment capacity. So we need to talk about how we're going to manage those stakeholders and how acceptable they would, and particularly the media, because we want them to buy into it and be positive. Moving on now. Feasibility. And I shorthand this many a time to can we? Can we buy an organisation in another part of the world? Well, yes, we can. It's already been said we can fund our acquisition through debt and equity. We already have a significant amount of cash flow in our accounts. So we've got retained earnings, so we've got the equity ourselves, and our investors are all potentially going to be supportive, so could well be supportive if they are going to get a positive return as a result. Can we operationally, do we have the core competencies? Yes, we do. We already operate 510 hotels, 46,000 hotel rooms at a nearly 80% occupancy rate. We already operate hotels. We can then train the staff to make sure that they are up to our given standard and our industry leading standard. From a strategic capability, our chief executive, Bernie, has already said that we would want to acquire an organisation in another country. We are looking to expand. Having said that, on the opposite side of the coin, we have never acquired a foreign entity before. Do we need to engage an external consultant? And you are more than welcome and within your rights to ask those questions and put them in your answer. At the closing point for our evaluation, you would conclude, and your conclusion would be along the lines of there are several positive factors to suggest ComfyStay Hotel is a viable acquisition for Highlight. Highlight's board will need to prioritise which aspects of the decision-making criteria is most important to the success of the venture before making a final decision. So effectively, your conclusion is balanced, which is one of the criteria of getting the professional marks, and you have been objective in your appraisal as you have gone along. I really like that question. I really like all of it, 1A and 1B. Let's have a look at the marking scheme. So as you can see along the top, up to 2 marks for each relevant point for evaluating the proposal to acquire the ComfyStay hotel chain. And points include, I'm not going to go to the trouble of adding them all up, but you would need 8 of these across an array of different sort of evaluative points, and a maximum of 16 marks is available. And they've got an absolute bucket load there for you to have a go. Have a read of them. And then when you do that, we'll go through the marking scheme to get your professional marks as well. In doing so, feel free to ask any questions and throw them in the question panel. Thank you very much. Hi, Sharice in Jamaica. Thank you very much. Oh, Yolanda, that's a good way of evaluating. So nicely done. Yeah, talking about international diversification. If people are asking about the numbers, Aisha, you're asking about that 13.2%. If you go back to the previous slides where I'd done my annotations on the Exhibit 3 of the investment NPV table, you'll be able to see how I got there. Thank you, John, for your input regarding the family business point versus listed organisation. So as we move along, what have we got here? So they've structured it with finance, strategic fit, acceptability and resource requirements. I said finance, suitability, acceptability and feasibility. So as you can see, they've not even used an SAF in blatant terms, but using it has allowed me to get a range of evaluative points. How do we get our professional marks? Not at all, not so well, quite well, and very well. Now let's not dwell too much. We'll just point out the key highlights here. Excuse me. You would not score any professional marks if you merely described and repeated the information from the fact sheet with no evidence of professional judgment. You would, however, gain 1 mark if you were to talk about the pros or just the cons. So in this instance, for example, there was no financial analysis at all. There was no financial analysis at all, or there was only financial analysis. One or the other is not good enough. You need to entwine some form of financial analysis and then further details, and that's why you need to elaborate your points with the causation and the so what approach. You need to present it in a report, it needs to be well balanced, and it needs to use both financial and non-financial information, and assesses a wide range of facts and evidence from various sources to present a well balanced and objective report, which is highly suitable for the evaluation of the Comfy Stay acquisition. Examples for our benefit, and we'll just jump straight in here. There is a range of stakeholders, and the acceptability of the investment to these, including the staff, customers and shareholders, as well as the other list of individuals. So I also had the media, I also had the local community in there. So you took a great deal of interest in stakeholders, as well as an appropriate structure, in a clear, concise. You talked about the strategic fit and other cultural factors. So well done. And I think now that's the end of the debrief for, or the end of the walkthrough for requirement 1A and 1B. Any questions? And I'm asking you one actually, straight out the gate. Did you like that requirement? So the first one was looking at national competitive advantages, and the second one was looking at a strategic evaluation. Did you like it? Sanika loved it. Thank you very much. That's good to see. Farkan, favourite question so far? Oh, it's getting better. Yes. Yeah, did you like it? Sounds like most of you did, so which is a really positive thing to see. So let's now get to the main event. Lots of people loved it, and not only did they love the requirement, hopefully you will love what we're about to do next. It is Kahoot o'clock. Woohoo! So as promised, we'll do another Kahoot this evening. It will be based all around highlights, and the case of highlight. And it'll be just a fun way to engage you, because I know we're getting on now, and try and make sure that you're taking something out of the case and the information we've gone through this evening. So it's a nice fun learning tool. For those who haven't used Kahoot before, you can go onto your search engine, type in kahoot.it, and you will find a landing page whereby you are asked to enter a game pin. And I will provide you with the game pin very shortly. Once you enter the game pin, you are then asked to enter your nickname, so please write your name. And we've had some great names so far and some great nicknames, and everybody seems to be buying into this, so it's a fun way of learning. The questions will pop up on screen. I will read them out, and then you press the answer which corresponds to the requirement, which corresponds to the color and the shape on screen. So with no further ado, let me get the Kahoot set up. Just clicking through, and if I unfreeze the screen, here we are. So we're playing a classic version. If you've done it before, fantastic, you'll know the ropes by now. If you've not done it before, go onto your Internet Explorer, find yourself kahoot.it, and then enter the game pin, which is 814118. Hopefully you can see the screen. We've got the usual suspects. Hello, Atiba. Hello, Liz. Thank you. Hi, E.T. Leeds is back in the house. Hassan, SP. Really good to see some familiar faces. Hi, Kiddist. I'm expecting a couple more. Let's get a few more on. Sandy Springs, again, you've been consistently on these Kahoots. Hopefully you're finding them engaging. Hi, E8. Atika's back in the house. Hi, Aisha. Aisha, should I say. Jay, well done. Yolanda. Didi was first on. Yolanda. If I can. Come on, guys. I reckon we can get a couple more on board. We had over 30 last night. I'll give you just another minute or two, maybe not even a minute or two, another couple of seconds. Tiga, you're on. See if anybody's struggling to get on. I'll have a quick look at the question box. Hello, Michelle. Thank you very much for joining us. We're at 28. I've also just seen a long question in the question panel from Charisse, which I will address after the Kahoot. So thank you very much, Charisse, for writing that question. I will look it up after we've had a bit of a game. So 28 seems like a nice number. Let's start the Kahoot for this evening and see how we get on. So evening 4. Quiz. What country is Highlight located in? Boom, man. 24, have you got it correct? Yes, it is Dealand. Well done for everybody who went there and got the correct answer. DD, the irony. Well done. Only 3 points between you and Nushad. I will just reiterate, the faster you answer, the more marks you get. Quiz. How would you classify Highlight in terms of hotel class? Is it 5-star, luxury, budget, or a campsite? So well done. The 26 of you obviously understand that Highlight is not a luxury hotel. It is a budget hotel. Luckily, no one went campsite, so that's quite positive in itself. Sanika's top of the pile, but it's a draw there with Didi. So interesting. 2015 apiece. Quiz number 3. How many hotels does Highlight operate? Yeah, 10 seconds to go, slightly less. If you've not got an answer and have a guess, hopefully you've retained this information. It was quite a profound figure. Boom! It operates 19. No, it doesn't operate 510 hotels in Dealand. 19 if you got it right. The 7 of you went for 46,000. It's probably because you thought it was a familiar number. That's how many hotel rooms they've got. 30 and 2,000. I'm just made up. Didi and Sanika, only 5 points between you. Hassan, well done. Nushad, should I say, well done as well. And Atiba, you guys are doing really well. All got over 3,100 points, so very close at the top. Antigua, you are on fire with a winning streak of 3 correct answers in a row. True or false? 75% of room bookings are done via Highlight's website. Yeah, true. It's actually, I should have been a little bit more specific with my answer, over 75%. Well done for the 24 of you went for that. Sanika, Hassan, Didi. See, but Jay, you've actually got a nice little fireball next to you, which is encouraging. So well done, Jay. You are on fire, hopefully not literally. Halfway through. Highlight values its staff highly and it's strongly committed to staff development and retention. Is this false or is this true? And the winner, oh, perfect. The first unanimous question, outstanding. We've gone, oh, don't know what I've just done there. Clicked on show media, I do apologize. Yes, true. They do value their staff highly, which leads to strong, committed staff, which are well developed and committed. Didi, you are on a streak. You are on fire. For some reason, Kahoot seems to give you a shout out, but Hassan is top of the pile with Sanika very closely behind. Let's see the next couple of questions. Which country is Highlight looking to expand into? Vlandia, Crewlandia, Provisionalandia, and Equitylandia. Some nice, terrible accountancy puns for you all there. Woohoo! 29 got them all right. So Vlandia is where they're looking to expand to. Sorry about the terrible tongue-in-cheek Crewlandia, Provisionalandia, and Equitylandia. I am an accounting geek. What can I say? So moving swiftly on, Hassan at the top of the pile, Sanika following very closely, Didi, Atiba, and Jay consistently staying in the top 5. Let's see how everyone else is getting on. So let's see how we get on with this next question, should I say. What is the name of the chief executive of Highlight? Is it Bernie Vokes or John Rose? Oh, beautiful. 24 of you got it right. The 4 of you went for John Rose. You would probably be familiar with that name because that was Railco's initial chief executive, which we fired because he was rubbish. So, so far so good. 24 of you got Bernie correct. There's a combo breaker. 3 players have just dropped a streak of 6, so that's pretty impressive. Many of you are scoring very well. It looks like a high-scoring Kahoot so far at this point. How much was Highlight invested in hotel refurbishment this year? Oh, it was 80 million they were going to invest in hotel refurbishments. For some reason, 12 of you went for 10 million. That's how much they were going to invest in a training scheme for their staff. So, Atiba, that's upset the top table. We've seen a bit of a topple there. Yolanda's come racing through. Charisse, a strong 3rd position. Sandy Springsteen, good to see you in the top 5. And Sanika sitting very nicely in 5th. Number 9, which of the following hotel chains has gone out of business? So you've got a good option here because there's 2 of them. You could have gone for Waterbay or ZZ Hulls. If you went for Highlight, I'm not sure why. Have you been reading the case? We've not gone out of business. And if you went for Comfy State, again, we are not out of business. We are looking to acquire them. So the penultimate question is here, or the last question is here, should I say. And in the top 5, we are looking pretty strong. Well done, Ismail, for being the highest climber. So Atiba with over 11,000, Yolanda and Charisse, Sandy Springs with 10,000, and Sanika with a solid 9,677. The last question, true or false? To pass the SBL exam, you always have to use a model in your answer. So, for some reason, people put true. I would virtually be scouring at you right now. No, you do not have to use a model for every answer. In fact, you do not have to use them at all if you don't see they fit. You do basically use them to your advantage, but do not force them in. Every single examiner's report makes a point of that. So, the podium, Charisse, woohoo! This is a new feature. Yolanda in 2nd, and in 1st, Atiba with 12,929. Outstanding results. Well done. And we've got a little celebration here. So Kahoot seems to be getting a little bit carried away. Atiba, 10 out of 10. Yolanda, 10 out of 10. Charisse, 10 out of 10. These were the top 3. These were the fastest 3. Absolutely brilliant. So well done, ladies and gents. I hope you enjoyed it. That's the end of the Kahoot for this evening, and now I will close the browser. So we are done with that one. We are now going to go back into our questions, and actually, our questions into our. Hang on a minute, that's incorrect. But bear me 1 second. We are now going to take a look at the examiner's report for for this exam, because I feel like it's a good time to do that. Now, for some reason on my slide I put June 19th, so please just bear with me for 60 seconds while I re-upload the correct examiner's report to the paper. So do bear with me for one moment. It won't take too long. I've not ran away. I just want to make sure I've got the right examiner's report. And here it is. So as I said, I just want to make sure it's on my what we call OneNote, and then I can go ahead and start debriefing with it. I'll also have a look at Sharice's question in a second as well. I think it's an interesting one. So she's asking about how to approach the exam in terms of, planning and looking at your requirements versus your exhibits. How do we go along and do that? So I'll also take a moment to address your question as well. So the examiner's report for December 2018 is all around highlights. So now you'll be able to see my screen, but before I talk through this, let me just make sure I have a good comprehension of what it is that you are asking in your question panel. So do you recommend we read the requirements? Thank you, Sharice. And then the exhibits, and then go back to the requirements to do an answer plan? Or should we do an answer plan whilst going through the exhibits? Do you recommend we read the requirements and then so it's just doubled it up? So, Sharice, what I would expect, and in my opinion, the best practice is for you to read the requirements first and then read the exhibits. But as you read the exhibits, you are doing your answer plan alongside the exhibits. And that's why it's good to do your answer plans to some extent in your answer booklet for various reasons. So the first page or the first 2 pages, you could just head up and write the word plan, and you could have them subheaded 1A plan. And then as you go through the exhibits, you're taking the points out of the exhibits that you are highlighting, and then in your answer plan, putting a big marker to yourself about what you are going to write in your answer. That's how I do it. So read the requirements so you know what you are looking for, and as you go through the exhibits, in other words, read the exhibits, put things into your answer plan. Because what that'll allow you to do is when you are writing up your answers, you don't necessarily have to go back and reread everything again. And that's what we're trying to avoid. So if you've already written up the key points from exhibits, you are then just looking at your plan and then expanding your plan into the necessary write-up of your answer. Sharice, does that make sense? I'd love for you to confirm that. If it does, let me know. And if it confirm it from anyone else as well. Thank you, Sharice. Brilliant question, by the way. I'm sure other people are probably thinking about that. So now we're going to have a look at the examiner's report for this particular exam, and it's quite apt because obviously we've just had a look at question 1A and 1B, and we also now have a good understanding of the actual exam in itself. Now I've changed onto a different platform called OneNote, which will allow me to sort of do some squiggles, hopefully, if I can find them. So if I go draw and highlight, yep, so we've got December 2018, woohoo, just to check, because it's a different platform, can people see that little blue highlight? I know it's a bit of a trivial thing, but I want to make sure the system's working okay. I'm hoping it's working. So yeah, if anybody could just verify that you can see the screen. Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, guys. Oh, now they're all filled in. There must be a bit of a lag. So here we go. This examiner's report is specific to the exam that we are talking through, and it's a good time to talk through it. So you can see the format of this examiner's report is very similar to the other 3 that we've looked at previously. So March, June, and December's previously. This was it March? March, June, and September's previously. So we've got a little bit of overview. We already know it's a 4-hour exam, so we don't need to worry about that, but it tells us it's about a hotel chain, which again we're aware of, 80 technical and then 20 professional. The exam performance overall, so strong candidates integrated and used the case study material throughout the answer, which is really encouraging. So we're seeing that there is a correlation between applying the case study, and that's where, you know, using the case names, understanding the key people and the key stakeholders like Bernie is very important. They demonstrate professional skills through analysis, discussion and evaluation, as well as commercial acumen, also through an appropriate structure and presentation. Oh, what's going on there? Weaker candidates used pre-learned knowledge as this basis for their answers and did not integrate the case study material adequately. So this is the examiner themselves effectively stating, do not just regurgitate something from a textbook, which many students did do when we think back to this exam, because they think, oh, I know what a Porter's diamond is, and they'll just tell you everything about it. Candidates must spend sufficient time reading, and then they've used this word assimilating, let's just be honest, reading, planning and understanding the case study, and often failed to make sufficient reference to the material or focus too much on 1 or 2 exhibits. So this was maybe a tip of the hat of students not using the exhibits for requirement 1B, maybe just using the numbers or not using the numbers at all. The exhibits provide material that underpin and apply the points that the candidate should be making. And that's why we read the exhibits and do our answer plan at the same time, because it guides us as to what goes in our answer. They give you background information and explanations, help candidates decide how to plan, and highlight the most important issues that are covered. So you get prioritization here. It's stressed that candidates should read the exhibits while keeping the requirements of each question in mind. I call that an active read and planning, as this helps to identify which questions they can draw on. In this exam, for example, the extract of an annual report, Exhibit 1, provided information that was relevant throughout the exam. Oh, excuse me, I'm a little bit skew-whiffed there. Extracts from the minutes, so Exhibit 6, provided information that was specific to requirement 3. Now, many people, when we talked about this exam on evening 1 and evening 2, and maybe some people last night as well, have asked, do the exhibits follow a pattern or a correlation? So does Exhibit 1 relate to requirement 1? Well, here is a case study, a real exam from last year where the exhibits can be used throughout, but also some of the exhibits are specific, and therefore it's imperative that you use your professional judgment. Candidates must also spend sufficient time planning. Again, this is why we're doing a lot of planning over this course, to make sure that you get used to how planning works, to produce a logical ordered, covering most important points and avoiding unnecessary overlap. And here they go in to talk specifically about 1A. So question 1A in the exam required candidates to consider factors which made highlight successful in its home country. Question 1B required candidates to evaluate an investment in a proposal in Zealand. Therefore, the investment proposal should not be considered as part of Part A. So therefore, that's just stressing the need to not overlap. Candidates are reminded to read the requirements carefully and only address the question that is being asked. Good planning prior to commencement should assist with this. Generally, candidates answered all 3 questions, though there was some evidence of a shortage of time. And again, just to hammer this home, 1.8 minutes per mark, inclusive of technical and professional marks of writing time. Most candidates, or most often candidates, struggled to get question 3B done. And if you take a second and you've got it to hand, question 3B is the presentation slide one. Who'd want to miss that one? Hey, it's a lovely question, and therefore you would be ashamed if you spent too long wasting your time on other requirements. Some candidates tailed off towards the end, showing they'd run out of stamina. Candidates strongly recommended to take a mock exam before the actual exam under full exam conditions to get used to the demands on concentration, thinking, writing, which is a full 4-hour exam required. Most candidates answered in the order where they did not Ooh, I do apologise. If you can still hear me, a little bit of a technical malfunction there. My headphones fell out. Most candidates answered in the question order, where they did not. We'll start that again. Where they did not, they appeared to be leaving one question which was likely which they liked the least until the end. Although this examination did not follow a timeline, and therefore a candidate should not be disadvantaged by answering questions out of sequence, it is recommended that candidates should normally answer the requirements in order. And a nice little point, I'll just highlight this last one. Future exams may follow a timeline or questions required that progress this way. So make sure you answer it how you feel fit firstly. And just to reiterate, this seems that there's a correlation between answering it in the necessary time frame, in the required 1, 2, 3. How do you get technical marks? Well, these are addressed in the requirements, and you need to consider the scope of these requirements to questioning the verbs. So one of the first verbs we've seen already was evaluate. The other verbs within requirements 1. So that first requirement stated discuss key factors, and then the other one was to evaluate the proposals. You need to apply the organisation, so apply the case study. That's where your PEC comes in. You should be specific in terms of your decision making and your situation, so carry on using the case and show the reader why the points have been made. So this is the so what even more. So if you said that you want to, I don't know, talk about the fact conditions, why are you talking about them? Weaker candidates saw trigger words or syllabus topics such as integrated reporting, which is illustrated in requirement 2, and wrote all they knew about that topic without application to the question requirements or highlights own requirement. Similarly, leaving in technical frameworks unnecessarily. So they try to force in a technical framework unnecessarily as the basis for their organisation, which lets the candidates into forcing answers to fit the framework and crucially providing an answer that had not met the requirement and was not helpful for the recipient. For example, and you might have thought about this, for 1A, many students tried to use a SWOT, which was not particularly useful, and also presented the information and therefore was quite a weak answer. In addition, general remarks such as the business should undertake more detailed analysis were not sufficient to gain a mark in requirement 1B, and this is as this is just not specific enough for the needs of the finance director in progressing with the decisions to invest in Comfy State or not. So a bit of a point there regarding being specific as well. Candidates also often just repeated case material. For example, in 1A, they did not explain how the factors identified had been important in the success of Highlight in the home country. For example, merely stating that Highlight had invested in a website was insufficient to explain how it had impacted the success in D-Land. In addition, upon the 2 technical marks, you also get some marks for explaining the consequences, and therefore expansion using your PEC is extremely important. Professional mark skills. Many candidates had clearly thought about the professional skills and attempted to present their answers in an appropriate tone and style. This is encouraging. This was definitely an improvement in the September 2018 sitting. So that's a positive in this sitting itself. However, there was many instances where candidates paid no attention to the format required, whereas the format requested the recipient will have helped by the answer that it presented clearly with headers. I love a header. You know why I love a header. Taking your sword into your exam, your sword being your ruler, and use that to help you structure your answer. Using headers throughout your answer, which avoids long overlapping paragraphs and repetitive information. Candidates need to explain points in which they will enhance an understanding of the recipient, such as senior managers, customers, and shareholders. Candidates also addressed clearly what recipients most wish to discuss. Moving forward, and then we'll get into the juicy part, which is question-specific comments. Candidates should remember that carrying out a professional task that has particular purpose for a defined user or stakeholder. It is vital that candidates read the technical and professional requirements together, as this assists the candidates to formulate an answer in the correct style, tone, and level of professionalism. And now they've gone in here to talk about question 3A. Candidates failed to do this in 3A. Candidates were asked to consider challenges and application of disruptive technology within the technical aspect of the question, and this answer should have been framed in the context and demonstrated in the professional skill of skepticism of the board of members and comments made in Exhibit 6. Most candidates completely ignored this and failed to demonstrate any skepticism of the board member. Therefore, although they may have presented a complete report format, it failed to demonstrate skepticism by challenging the board members, and they awarded few professional marks as a result. Let's take a look at the examiner's comments regarding students' answers for question 1A. So we already know what the requirement was. This requirement required candidates to discuss the key factors that enabled Highlight to be successful in its home country. This was required by the FD in order to understand Highlight's position in its home country, and it looked to acquire another hotel chain, Comfy Stay, in Vilandia. Professional skills were given for analysis, and you needed to produce a briefing paper, which we now know what looks like for 1A. It's positive to see that most candidates identified and explained reasons, a range of reasons for both internal and external factors which played a part in Highlight's success in D-Land. Strong candidates correctly recognised that the requirement could, and we'll go with could be there, could be addressed by applying a Porter's Diamond to identify those factors of success in its home country. However, candidates were not penalised if they did not use a model. So that's the examiner themselves stating that you do not necessarily need to use a model in every instance, and particularly in this requirement, you didn't lose anything by not using a model. They would, however, need to include a wide range of factors that led to the specific success in Highlight. This included national infrastructure, government support, strong support hotels and tourism, industry for the support of industry, and highly competitive marketplace. Strong candidates also those who did not, strong candidates were also those that not only identified these factors, but explained their significance to highlight success. So there's an example of students using the so what approach, saying, so what, this is the factor. So we talk here about national infrastructure. So what, why would that help me be successful? Well, as a result, we've got strong infrastructure in terms of transport networks. Our hotels are placed near airports, and therefore we will have a demand within that and the linkages, which leads us to have a competitive advantage. All right, we've got government support. So what? How do we explain that in terms of highlight success? Well, as a result of the government support, we get some form of tax incentives or tax breaks by employing people in tourism industry. So that's the way in which we want to expand. Strong candidates also took an alternative approach, an alternative approach and considered internal factors of success such as commitment to staff training and retention, significant investments in technology, and excellent location. So if you didn't use a Porter's Diamond, or you didn't think to use a Porter's Diamond, or you didn't want to use a Porter's Diamond, the other structure could have been internal factors and external factors, and that would have scored you the mark allocation of 16. So that's really encouraging to see. These points were equally as valid as long as they were explained in the context of how they had contributed to highlight success, whereas weak candidates were those that provided a very limited range of factors driving highlight success, for example, of information included in the case material with little to no explanation of their relevance to success. And they're given a nice example here. For example, some candidates focus too much on KPIs in Exhibit 1 without drawing sufficient conclusions or explaining why these factors in highlight had been successful. Others highlighted the outcomes of the KPIs of these success factors, high level of customer satisfaction, rather than the factors themselves. And some of you, I tried to allude to this when we were doing the answer plan. It's all well and good saying we have high customer satisfaction, but so what? How did we get there? To score highly in professional marks, candidates needed to have a variety of information to produce a balanced discussion of a wide range of factors. Some candidates failed to score well on the professional marks because they merely restated the information contained in the exhibits rather than analysing the relevance in the board discussion. Here's an example of people who shoehorn in a Porter's Diamond or a Pastel, which is fine, but you don't necessarily need to. So many candidates used Porter's Diamond. They also could have used a Pastel, which is nice to hear. Some employed these well, but others spent time defining the framework, and they discussed to fit the framework, limiting their marks even. So a good point to learn from this extract here from the examiner's report. And if I could just grab you now, if you are going to use a framework, you do not need to explain what the framework is. So you don't need to explain what a fact condition is or what a political outlook is, because that's very academic. It's very much the applied skills level of the qualification. If you are going to use a framework or a model, just apply it to the case and be specific to the case itself, as opposed to being academic and restating and telling the examiner that you know what's in the textbook. Moving on and to the bottom of this one, a number of candidates produced essay type answers rather than a concise briefing note, therefore scoring low or no marks. This demonstrated weak professionalism. Question 1B, this question required candidates to evaluate the proposal to acquire comfy stay hotel chain based in another country, and you got professional marks for an evaluation. Many candidates used SAF. They've called it a framework. I'm just calling it a way of expanding your answer, which was appropriate and useful. However, candidates were not expected to provide any definition of the model. Just a waste of your time. And you do see it over and over again. Students tend to think that it's appropriate to tell you in their answer script, oh, I know everything about an SAF, or I know what a Porter's Diamond is, or a Porter's Five Forces, or a Pastel, or an Ansough's Matrix, or all the other lovely models that are within the scope of the syllabus. When reality is that we just want you, if you do use the model, to apply it to the case study. Most candidates earn some marks for considering the financial information presented in the fact sheet, brilliant, in Exhibit 3. Strong candidates were those that recognise that further analysis of information presented in the NPV was needed. This included advice such as undertaking sensitivity analysis on the revenues and key cost categorisation. Strong candidates also evaluated a range of non-financial considerations, including strategic fit of comfy stay, potential cultural differences, staff and shareholder reactions, and a consideration of whether Highlight had necessary resources for such an acquisition. This is brilliant because what you're doing is just reaffirming that many of you were very much along the right lines when you talked about the cultural issues, buying in another part of the world, in another country, and therefore were reaffirming that we were doing a really good job. Candidates were expected to use information from a variety of sources, but largely exhibits 1, 2, and 3. However, candidates who used information from exhibit 4, although not necessarily within the correct time frame of the analysis, were credited if the information was used effectively. Specifically consider the potential risks posed by Highlight for this investment. What did the weaker candidates do? Well, weaker candidates were those who produced very limited evaluation of the information provided in the case material. Instead, providing restatements of data, for example, stating that Veland is 5,000 miles away, is not sufficient. If you did want to state that, which is not a problem, you would need to say the so what. Velandia is 5,000 miles away. As a result, there is logistical issues and in terms of getting our staff over to a country in such a considerable distance away, convincing our staff to stay there in a location so far away from their home for periods of 3 to 12 months. We have also got the cultural issues as a result of that distance as well, and anything along those lines. Weaker candidates also frame their answer in a series of questions such as do highlight, have staff skills to manage a range of hotels? How will shareholders react to the poor environmental practices? Candidates are strongly recommended not to frame their questions as answers. Oh, that's a nice bit of insight. That's actually being transparently something that I think is very worthwhile noting. So don't ask questions. This is a very poor examination technique. Candidates are strongly encouraged to frame their responses in direct answers. So don't use question marks. All right. Coming to an end in this part here, to score high professional marks, candidates needed to present a balanced and objective report using a range of both financial and non-financial data. Most candidates did not present it in a suitable report format, but strong candidates, or those who did quite well and not very well, were those who presented a report in a suitable format in the needs for the financial director to gather sufficient and balanced information and make sound objective decisions. The candidates who scored not so well failed to present this in a sufficient balanced evaluation to assist the FD in making those decisions, who merely repeated the material from the case, thus not demonstrating sufficient evaluation skills. I do think, and I will stand by this, that the examiner's reports are extremely valuable. If you haven't, or you didn't get a chance to already read the examiner's reports from the previous webinars, make sure you do. Have a read of them. If you have sat exams previously, so I know that I've had emails from a few students on these webinars now who've sat the exam twice or maybe once and failed. I think it would be extremely valuable for you to read the examiner's reports from the sitting in which you did yourselves. The examiner's reports can be found on the ACCA's website, and for the benefit of those who need to know where they are, I will show you right now. So ACCA exam. Oh, maybe it's gone straight to FM. I do apologise. So if you go student study support resources, you go on to ACCA qualification, and actually, generally speaking, this is useful for any of your exams. So if you're also doing another exam, or you've going to study another one going forward, we have all these resources on our study support resources website. So we'll go into SBL. And if you have a little scroll down, we've got Introduction to SBL, the examining team guidance, study support guides. Retake guides are really useful for those who haven't sat, who have sat the exam before and not been successful. It allows you to maybe try and figure out and look at it from a perspective of maybe where you went wrong. Now we've got syllabus, and then for those who for English is an additional language, we've got the English language support. Specific now, so learning and revision. Technical articles, I would advocate and stress the need to read these technical articles, and we'll have a look at them in a moment. Paper specimen exams, so this is where real code came from, and there's another 2 specimens on there as well. So if you're looking for some exam practice, make sure you do this. Past papers. So we've got the December 2018 past paper, the September 2018 past paper there. A little bit on CBE. I'm not sure why that's there, because that doesn't relate to SBL just yet. Professional skills for SBL. So if anybody needs any additional help for the strategic business leader paper, exam technique resources, and some FAQs. What's nice to see as well is that there's been a slight increase, a positive increase in the global pass rates. So in last sitting in June, there was 51%, and I'm sure the Septembers will be on here shortly. If I am looking for my technical articles, which is what I'm looking for, and looking to show you where you can find these technical articles. They are actually split into the areas of the syllabus. So we've got leadership, governance, strategy, risk, technology, data analytics, organization control, and innovation and excellence, innovation, performance excellence, and change management. There's a couple of other additional supports here as well. So I really like this document here, Strategic Business Leader, 10 Things to Learn from September 2018 Sitting. It's a really nice, short, concise document, one that I haven't actually talked through, and I'm not going to talk through this evening. 10 short, punchy things that support many of the concise sort of examiners' reports, and there's a lot in there. It's a really good document. Many students liked it when I was teaching this and still do. We've already looked at how to approach as well. So we've got the passing strategic business leader from a professional marks perspective as well. So they talk about here, read the requirement first, and so on and so forth. So if you haven't been on our study resources, our study support resources website just yet, please do. To find the examiner's reports, it's within the examining team guidance, I believe. I hope it is. Yes, here we go. And we've got examiners reports from September, June, March, December, and September. So we've got quite a lot going on here. There's also the videos as well, which are useful. And then again, this SBL 10 things we learned. The importance of effective communication, which you should have already seen previously. And there is a considerable amount of resources and videos here. Now we are drawing to an end of this evening's session, and I just want to sort of get back into the PowerPoint just to sort of summarize. So tomorrow, and it'll be our final session, we will be looking at requirement 2 and requirement 3 for highlight, and then I'll be fielding any questions you have. I'm more than happy to look at any questions you've got now. So I will look now at the question panel and see if there's anything additional in here. Right, just while we've got a couple of minutes spare, Exhibit 2 is a nice exhibit. You've got to produce a press release. And this specifically relates to criticisms in relation to social and environmental impacts. Exhibit 2B is producing a briefing note, and so if you want to, it might be worth having a little bit of a look and a scrub up on integrated reporting and how it will assess effective communication and building relationships with key stakeholders. Exhibit 3A looks at disruptive technology, and I remember that somebody asked me to look at that within the context of this course, so we can tick that box there. And then Exhibit 3B, presentation slides looking at risks and risk management. We are now pretty much at the end of this evening's session. If there is anything you'd like me to cover specifically, even more detail, if you'd like me to sort of have a look at something tomorrow, this is your time to do it. Otherwise, we will be over and out in the next 120 seconds. I can see some questions coming in, so thank you very much for those. Thank you, John. I am very, very pleased that you found this useful. I appreciate your input. It is extremely motivational for me to hear that you're finding these useful, and I will continue to stay committed to make sure that you are as successful as you possibly can be. I think these webinars are a really, really good way to try and help you guys, so hopefully you are finding them useful. Yeah, like that question, couple coming in as well. So Yolanda, thank you. It's great to hear that I've boosted your confidence. Let's keep your confidence high, and I hope you're not the only one. Hassan, you like the way that I explained how to evaluate Can you please explain how the other ones should be used? Yeah, I'll tell you what, I could spend some time doing a little bit of a little bit of an understanding. Or let me just write this down. Where's my notepad gone? Anyway, enough about my notepad. I could look at the verbs. We can definitely have a look at that. Please, can we do a question on IR and how to answer it? Yes, John, we're doing that tomorrow. Right then, ladies and gents, thank you again. Well done again on the Kahoot and your engagement. It is extremely helpful when I have a class like you. So I look forward to our final session tomorrow. Have a beautiful evening and a great day Friday. I'll see you soon.